Have you ever wondered how megachurches get all that money? I've got the tea. Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. All right, so quick disclaimer. I used to work in a megachurch. I don't anymore. I don't think they're a great idea. But let me tell you about a couple of lies and some manipulative practices that happen at, as far as I can tell, every single megachurch. The first one is actually common to all churches, and that is they pressure their people to give 10% of their income because they say, they preach, they teach in their services that the Bible says that you should give 10% of your income. That's actually not true. If you want to take the biblical standard for how you should give, it's really 22.5%. There's two 10% assessments and a 2.5% assessment. And you can look that up. That's really well known. It's not hard to find. But that's problematic. Taking anything from that biblical culture and sort of applying it to today is problematic because the function of the temple was way, way different in that time. Because in the Old Testament, which is where this practice comes from, the people were living in a theocracy. The church ran the entire government, right? The church was the government in many places and in many times, and even when they had a king, the idea was that the king was sitting in for God's self, which is very different than the way we run things today. And so the tithe was not just supporting the church, it was supporting the government. It was doing all the things that taxes do. Okay, not all the things. Of course, the government got bigger, the government got greedier, they assessed taxes, but that's beside the point. So we start out with the idea that the Bible doesn't teach 21st century people to give 10% of their income to the church. You know, sort of that's the baseline. And then on top of it, it's the way they talk about it, right? So people will say, well, do I have to give 10% of the net after my taxes or 10% of the sort of gross amount that I make, which is a sort of minute problem. But the pastors will say, yeah. I mean, it depends on whether you want to get blessed on the 10% of on the net or the gross. Because even the ones that don't teach the sort of prosperity gospel that you will get tenfold whatever you put in, they all teach that if you tithe, you will be blessed according to your tithe. And that happens everywhere. I've heard that kind of idea that God blesses you based on your giving over and over, even in the churches that aren't the crazy ones that are not teaching prosperity gospel. I've heard that over and over and over again. And they bring in people, right? They actually have classes. There are courses that are available to churches to offer for free, video courses by so-called experts that will give you financial freedom. And the financial freedom includes, wait for it, 10% giving. And so they'll have a whole class that helps people budget, that helps people figure out how to deal with their debt. But over top of all of that is this idea that you're gonna give 10%. Like, that's a baseline concept. And nobody's exempt because they teach that you're gonna be blessed based on giving to the church. And so if that's the case, then if you want to be blessed by God, then you're going to need to give. And if you're on Social Security, you're going to have to give. If you're on a sort of fixed income, you're going to have to give. If you don't really make enough money to live by, if you're living below the poverty line, if you want to be blessed by God, you have to give. And then there's the building campaigns, the capital campaigns. I was at churches that did this regularly. You'd have a capital campaign for some sort of building that needed to be built or whatever. It'd be 3 years long, and close to the end of the 3 years, you bring in a capital campaign consultant. Like, I have seen capital campaign consultants that were paid $100,000, $150,000 to come in and help you manipulate your people, not into giving a tithe, but to giving more. They called it sacrificial giving. And I've been in meetings where those consultants will say, okay, here's the thing. If you don't always do a capital campaign, if you don't start a new one at the end of the old one, you're just leaving money on the table. And here's the key to making a capital campaign work that most people don't tell you. The senior pastor will solicit major gifts from people before announcing the goal, before giving the little thermometer that says how much we are going to have. He solicits significant major gifts so that you can start after the first Sunday with saying, The first Sunday that we did this capital campaign, we've already raised $100,000. And it's not because everybody gave, it's because one person committed $100,000, but it's part of the manipulation practices. Oh, but the manipulation runs deep because there is a report generated by the financial secretary that shows all the people who have given over a certain amount, and those people get a personal meeting with the pastor. Not all the people, just the rich people, where they sit down and they talk about their ability to give, where they may ask about their income or what it is that they want to see done in the church and make commitments, and then that person agrees to donate a significant amount of money. Meanwhile, every single Sunday, they're manipulating all the people who don't have a lot of money impersonally and trying to get them to sacrifice even more of the money that they don't have, that they can't afford to give. And let's just be clear, they don't need it. They don't need the money, because what ends up happening in this kind of a system is you keep getting money, people keep sacrificing and giving, and all you do is you grow things, you build things, you buy another giant screen, or you hire another staff person, but things were going fine before you did this sacrificial giving campaign, and all this does is increase the overhead and increase the need for getting people to give more and more money. And so there is this giant organization that's built up that is requiring lots of money, because let's just be clear, there are a lot of people whose lives and families depend on that income, because it keeps getting built up over and over and over again. And so the pressure to get more money, it gets higher and higher and higher. And so in a lot of these churches, people will go in and visit and feel like, wow, they talk about money all the time. And they do, because the only way that they can keep going is to keep asking people to give up money that they don't have for bigger and bigger staffs, bigger and bigger buildings that sit empty half of the week. And I mean, it just goes on and on. But that's how they do it. That's some of the key manipulation practices. And that's just wrong. Shouldn't be happening. It's got to stop. Because that's the kind of stuff that Jesus started turning over the tables in the temple for. And yeah, I was part of it. I did a lot of those things, and I was complicit in it, and I am so ashamed of it. It's one of the things that you just have to live with every day when you allowed yourself to be manipulated to and be part of that manipulative system. But this is me trying to expose it and trying to help people escape it and get out of that manipulative system.